So I guess based on the keynote this morning, we drove off a lot of you. Um, this actually is an interesting follow-up to the presentation I gave earlier. So if you think of what we were talking about in the Teaching Elephants presentation, all those kind of prerequisites, if you will, for actually getting ready for cloud-native development and for microservices development, we're going to try to show you some of the effort we're putting in right now. And it's a brand new development tool called OpenShift.io. We'll show you a demonstration of it. We'll see how it behaves for me. And that'll give you a perspective of what we're trying to do to help mitigate the learning curve, if you will, the getting started experience associated with getting ready for CI/CD pipelines, getting your Jenkins configured, getting your microservice template laid out, and a bunch of other things we're working on. So this is very much real early R&D that you guys are going to see in this session. Is that fair? Is that cool? All right. This is nothing you can get a support subscription on today, or you can't even touch this today. Just keep that in mind. What I'll be showing you is stuff that you'll have to get on the wait list for. So you can go to OpenShift.io right now and actually get on the wait list, but it'll be a while before we get new people in. All right, so one thing that I should mention, though, I represent developers.redhat.com. That is our primary website. We're the owner of all the tools and developer experience associated with Red Hat technologies. So if you're familiar with JBoss Developer Studio, or even our C++ Eclipse tooling, or maybe the CDK, like with just the Minishift CDK, where you can actually do OpenShift on your laptop as an example. We own all those kinds of tools, and we also own OpenShift.io. But we also publish a lot of books. These are free ebooks that are available to you, and if you're interested, these are in chronological order. So we published a Java microservices one about a year ago. This is for getting started with like Drop Wizard, Spring Boot, things of that nature. That's really nice. We also do the .NET on Linux. So if you're into .NET Core on Linux, we have a book specific to that for any .NET C# developer you may know. Friends and family, give them away at Christmas, kind of thing. Migrating to microservices databases. Now this is where it gets pretty more specialized. For people who actually are interested in microservices, the number one question in their mind is, wait a second, I'm going to have 45 databases instead of one monolithic database now? Yes, because that's the nature of microservice. Every microservice gets its own database. However, you're going to have a whole lot of pushback on that in your organization. Your DBA is going to just say, hell no. And your developers are like, I don't want a database to deal with. And so this actually is a series of strategies for how to manage your monolithic database in a microservices architecture. There's a lot of things in there like materialized views and some technology called Debezium. Some really interesting ideas in there for how to deal with databases. And then the last one we just released is related to VertX. VertX is actually the technology I'm most interested in, and I'll give you a little demo of VertX in this particular session today. But this is the reactive microservices on Java with VertX. So it's reactive programming, reactive systems, different than what you're used to if you come from a traditional Spring on Hibernate Java-E type background. Okay, if you do standard JAX-RS, or you do standard Java-E, or you just do Spring MVC, if you live in that mental world, this doesn't look like that. If you have a Node.js background, this will look familiar to you, okay? Because that's what it was modeled after. Basically, a reactive programming model, which means you have callbacks, or you have futures or promises, or you can have RX Java as well, which is super nice. And everything's done async. And this also means it scales vastly better than what you've seen before. One of the demos I often run is I show how 200 concurrent users can just kill a Spring Boot application, or even a Wildfly JBoss application, because it all works the same way. WebLogic, WebSphere, it all works the same way. Or, VertX looks like it just keeps on scaling. And there's a trick to it, obviously, but the nature of the async reactive programming model allows for that. So those are some books that are available to you. I encourage you to go check those out. We also have a bunch of technologies to download. A lot of people don't realize that we have Red Hat Enterprise Linux out there available for you to download, and you can just get access to that. You can get access to various developer tools and technologies like data virtualization. The container kit is particularly interesting to me. That's your OpenShift on your laptop. So if you want to do RHEL-based Docker builds, with a Red Hat Enterprise Linux Docker build, that's what it's for. If you want to run Kubernetes, you want to run OpenShift, that's what the CDK is for. It's pretty nice. So I'm actually running it right now on this laptop, even though I'm not going to use it for this session. Okay? All right, so we talked about this earlier. This is your journey to microservices. Think about what you got from a DevOps standpoint and how you're going to adopt those principles, those cultural changes. Think about what it means to have some form of self-service on-demand elastic infrastructure. And if you have access to an OpenShift or a Kubernetes cluster, you have access to this, right? Because literally, you can basically say, spin up a new container, new container. And until you reach your quota, you keep spinning up containers. And that's all you got to do, right? There's no, you can use an API call, command line, web user interface. There's no ticket to file. There's no virtual machine to wait 3 to 6 to, actually someone was just telling me in the hallway, it takes them 6 months to get new virtual machines for the agency that they work for. So when I said 3 weeks, I thought that was kind of funny. You know, it's 6 months for virtual machines at the agency he works for. So if you have that issue, using something like a Kubernetes backbone or OpenShift backbone will work for you. Think in terms of automation. Now, in the case that I live in the developer space, most of these tools are actually in the operational space, right? So Puppet Chef and Ansible are great for your hardcore Linux admin types, right? Those people who want to practice DevOps from the ops perspective. I come at DevOps from the dev perspective, so I use Kubernetes as my automation tool. I know that sounds kind of strange, but it does everything I need to stand up all my containers, connect to databases. Here's my route queue thing, boom, done. That's all I need, all right? I can templatize the whole thing, run it through a Maven command or a Jenkins pipeline. We'll see a little bit of that in the demo, okay? We're going to definitely see deployment pipelines as we get going here. We're not going to focus too much on deployment techniques in this particular demonstration, but the reason we do, I'm mentioning all this now, even though it's a repeat of what we did this morning, is we're going to focus a lot in this area. That's what OpenShift IO is going to help you do, right? Setting up a deployment pipeline for a lot of people can be quite awful. It can take you months, if not years, of your life trying to figure that out for your organization. Now we have it kind of baked into a wizard. You just kind of click it, click, 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 and then you get one. And then you can go modify it to your heart's content, but the fact that we have one out of the box is kind of crazy. And I'll show it to you, okay? Now, one thing you should keep in mind before you get into this cloud-native microservices world, there's a lot, I mentioned those prerequisites, right, that I talked about earlier, but it's not only me talking about this. It's Neil Ford's organization, specifically a guy named Martin Fowler. You know, so he likes to say you must be this tall to ride this ride. I really love this analogy because I was that kid who wasn't tall enough to ride the roller coaster for many, many years, if you follow my meaning. I talk about this when I'm overseas, like when I'm in Singapore or other places, and since they don't have roller coasters, they don't know what I'm talking about. But yes, I could not get on the ride, you know, so I'd go up to it and stand on my tiptoes and say, come on, let me on the ride. So that's why I like that concept. Same things we just talked about, okay? Now, quickly, the Java EE world, this is the world I come from. I'm assuming some of you folks have a Java EE background, enterprise Java background. We had to think in terms of an operating system. Our code runs on an operating system, no big deal there. It runs in a Java virtual machine, okay, fine. If it's not a Java virtual machine, maybe it's a CLR if you've come from the .NET universe. Maybe it's V8 if you're a Node person. There's some form of runtime, right, associated with it, unless you write true native code. There's an app server of some sort in the Java world, right? You got to have that configured correctly. Then you lay down your ear, you throw your wars in your ear, right? And then you throw your jars in your war, and it just goes on and on and on. And this is per spec how we were told to build applications for the last 15 years, okay? Now, the reason this is problematic is because everyone has to agree on the whole team on this whole stack, okay? Like if we, let's say this is our team, the people in the room. We represent business analysts and project managers and coders and operators and DBAs. Let's say that's it, this is the team. And I'm sure some of you work on teams vastly larger than this one. Some of you work on smaller teams, I'm sure. But we all have to agree, the same version of operating system, the same version of everything. And as Neil said in his presentation, I think it's quite a profound statement, the enterprise architecture team, the people who set the standard for the stack, they looked at the worst case scenario workloads to define those requirements. But all we want is to stand up a new little API, right? In today's modern digitally transformed organization, I got to get a new API shipped out the door tomorrow. And yet I have to work with a stack that looks like this. So this is where problems come in. Not to mention we have to agree to the same third-party Maven dependencies, the same data transfer objects if we're still using DTOs, which we shouldn't be at this point, but you know, we might be. The same entities, we have to agree. We can't actually use 2 or 3 versions of Spring. We have to agree to the same version of Spring. That's why this actually gets to be monolithic and slower, because you're going to have the whole team working on that, let's say 40-something people working on that, and they all have to agree. And you guys can imagine getting 40 people to agree to something is hard. If you guys ever tried organizing like a local Boy Scout group or Girl Scout group, you can't get 10 little kids organized to go agree to something, right? Try to organize something for your church. Can't get 10 people to agree to anything. So can you imagine in a work setting, it's even worse. Okay, so this is why the microservices architecture becomes interesting to people, because you break up that monolithic architecture into different independent fully independent teams who have their own independent life cycle, their own deployment model. They are responsible for their product, not project, for getting that thing to run in production. Okay, that's the difference between the monolithic world, the microservices world, and this is why microservices are so exciting to so many people. They're like, I can break free of the monolithic stack. I can basically, ignore the enterprise architecture team and all those standards committees who stand in my way. That's where a lot of this interest comes from. But if you decide you're going to go down this path, you're going to become accountable for that stack. You build it, you own it. That's the idea from Amazon, at least. And that's where the concept of two-pizza team, and you build it, you own it, comes from. So yes, you have full freedom to do what you will, but you own it, okay? But this level of freedom can be a game changer for organizations. Like there's one case study we have called KeyBank, a banking organization where they specifically needed to modernize all their customer-facing APIs, essentially their mobile-facing APIs, which as you can imagine for a bank is super critical. And that's one project where they took it from a 3-month deployment monolith, right, to a 1-week deployment monolith. By applying all these other principles we talked about, DevOps, right, ownership, accountability, understanding automation, leveraging Linux containers and OpenShift and things like that. So before you break up the thing, you might first consider if you can do all the other things that make you faster, from an automation standpoint. These are key microservices principles. The ones that'll kill you, Neil mentioned these two in his presentation, decentralized governance, right, and decentralized data management. A lot of organizations are just going to say hell no to that, quite honestly. Even though everybody in the room here will say, no, we're going to do it. There's some boss along the food chain along the way to say, we don't do that stuff around here. We're only centralized. The ivory tower architecture team is going to not like this at all. I can tell you that. That's why they're in the ivory tower, right? Now, so you're going to have a fight with them. If, in fact, this is a big concern, number 7, that's the book I was talking about earlier. That's what we're trying to address with that specific book, because that's always been question number 1. How do I deal with my database? Okay? Let's keep going pretty quickly here, because I want to show you the demo where it's more interesting. This is a survey that was run. There's all these different problems associated with, whether it be project management, like success of Agile versus Waterfall, or developers don't lack cloud experience. The whole idea behind this is there's a bunch of problems associated with trying to move into a microservices cloud-native solution. Okay, there's just a bunch of stuff that gets in your way, and one of the things we wanted to address is some of that stuff. Okay, if we can actually deal with certain things, we're going to try to. So what we have with OpenShift.io is the concept of an end-to-end development experience. It's a cloud-native development experience for building cloud-native applications. In other words, the whole thing runs in the cloud, and then while you're working with it, you're generating new cloud apps. Okay, new cloud services is the way to think of it. Because everything in this new world is a form of an API. We give you APIs and a user interface on top. You build new APIs for your customers to consume, and that's how it's supposed to go. Okay? And we give you the full pipeline, we give you the fast turnaround time, we give you analytics so you know if it's performing correctly, et cetera, and therefore you hopefully can build new APIs today. As soon as you get access, in theory, you could throw down an API within the first, let's say, 10 minutes that you're on the system. That's kind of the idea. Ready, hosted, ready to rock, right? In production kind of thing. That's kind of the idea of this, okay? Pipelines are part of the experience. We also have this interesting crowdsourced and analytic capability. I'll show you briefly what that is. Again, all of this is brand new stuff, but you kind of see where we're going with this kind of concept, okay? Let's do this, all right? Let's go ahead and just jump into it. You're going to see this concept of the virtuous cycle. So let's see if we can make this demo run. And all right. Okay, so the first thing I'll do is go here, get to this main dashboard. So this is kind of our main dashboard as it stands right now. And you'll see that I have the concept of code bases. I have built a lot of code bases because I've just been cranking them out to test the system as an example. I'm up to 13 there. I have my stack recommendations, and so I do have a gotcha in my app right now, and it's recommending that I go in there and fix something. That's actually kind of cool because it's actually letting me know that there is a CVE in my application that based on the fact that I put a certain dependency in my POM XML, because this is what developers do, right? They actually will add things to their POM XML to solve an API, get a new jar file that they need. And then what's really funny is those actually go through into production pretty rapidly. We see that all the time. In this case, it's still going through to production, but I'm at least telling you, you have a problem, okay? And I'll show you more aspects of that. So there is a CVE in there, specifically for this logback item. Based on my screen scaling here, it's a little bit weird looking. but you can see I use three dependencies. It's letting me know that. It's giving me some, some code metrics associated with that, approximate complexity, the lines of code. I actually think the lines of code one's pretty interesting. Most people forget in the Java universe that they actually are bringing in a lot of stuff when you suck in one of those things into your POM XML. You bring in Spring, oh my God, right? You just added a ton of crap to your application, all of which may have its own list of vulnerabilities. And you got to keep that in mind. So it doesn't matter what it is. If it's Hibernate Spring, in this case, I'm using a Vertex-based app, which is at least small, but still, no matter what you bring in, it could open you up to all sorts of stuff. So we're trying to make that front and center as an example, give you those analytics right up front. You can see it's giving me a recommendation to fix that specific version because the version I am using does have a known vulnerability, in which case I can create a work item to then task someone with that to go solve that problem as an example. We'll just ignore that for now because I like leaving it in there for the purposes of demonstrating it. You can see my work items that are listed here. And one of the things I'll do is I'll go into the planning section. So we have a planning section built right in here. And actually, let's just do this. I'm going to go to my Kanban board, and I'll show you my tasks as an example. So if you're familiar with a Kanban board, the idea is that you basically move your items from left to right to say, OK, here's my backlog. Now I'm going to be working on it, and it's in progress. It's kind of the simple idea for Kanban. And if you're familiar with online Kanban solutions that are out there, that's kind of what we have here. And the idea is, let's see if I can do this. Let's go ahead and add I'm going to just add a bug. How about that? Add a bug. Right now my application, let's see. Let me run my application real quick. This is what my application currently is, right? So it has Vertex Demo API 2, and it says Hello World, and it says Aloha 2. You see that? It doesn't need to say Aloha 2. That's not right. Remove 2. Let's see. Create. Right here. There we go. And I'm going to assign it to myself. And again, the UI is compressed here, so this is something we're going to obviously have to work on based on the projector. But now I have that bug. Let me go over here and look at bugs. OK, and there's remove 2. Let me move it over here. And actually, let's move it all the way to in progress. OK, I'm now ready to work that task. That's kind of the idea. But we wanted to integrate this kind of experience into the system so that you could see stack recommendations produce, work items, tasks, bugs, etc. I have the Kanban board built in. I can leap from here directly into the work that needs to be done, as an example. So this is all part of kind of the getting started experience. But let me show you one other piece that's pretty important here. Let me go back over here. OK, MySpace. Come on, there we go. Let me bring up this wizard. And this is an important one. I'm going to click here. So I mentioned earlier that we kind of set things up for you. And actually, I was showing you some things that were already set up because I already have this project in flight, right? It's already running, and I'm just working on it. But let's say you had to start from scratch. You truly had nothing. You're going to basically get this wizard right here. And you're going to see things like the technology stack is a good example. I'm using a Vertex app because that's my favorite tool to use. But let's say you love Spring Boot. And this is all microservices, by the way. We're only focused on cloud-native apps here, right? There's no pure Java E here. There's nothing of that nature. You really aren't going to. You could build monolithic apps with this, but you would kind of not be using the tool correctly, if you will. It's really focused on microservices. So that's why you see things like Spring Boot here, Vertex, and Wildfly Swarm. We have a number of out-of-the-box templates to kind of get you started. You know, you want something with a database CRUD, create, read, update, delete, config maps, which is a Kubernetes-specific capability for managing configuration, health checks. You know, how to do a specialized health check. That's actually pretty awesome. The Kubernetes or OpenShift has a really nice health check mechanism built into it. So that's how you know when you deploy that the system is behaving well. I don't know if any of you folks have ever worked on a public website where you actually had to hire a third party to ping your website and poll it just to see if it was up, and it would page you overnight if the site went down. You guys ever? Maybe you guys haven't worked on too many public websites, but that's what we used to do back in the day, right? If you had a public website, you'd have a third-party SaaS that would poll it, ping it, page you if it went down. That's what Kubernetes is doing for free in this case. All right, it's literally watching your pod, your containers running, and it does health probing. And if it finds it doesn't respond to health probe, right, it recycles it for you. You don't have to do anything. It doesn't page you. It just fixes it, which is kind of nice. And that's what that health check thing is for. You write the business logic for determining if you're healthy or not healthy. So you can kind of see Wildfly Swarm is kind of like Spring Boot, but the Java E APIs. So Spring Boot is great for Spring MVC APIs or REST template APIs, and then you have Wildfly Swarm for standard JAX-RS APIs, as an example. But I'm going to stick with Vertex for now. And all right, you got to give this thing a name. By default, MySpace was the name of my space, which is just a grouping solution. I just thought that was funny, right? Like the old MySpace, not Facebook. Maybe I should call it Facebook just to see, if people notice that. But this, it's just my project, right? My project on GitHub, right? It's just your project that's going to go out to GitHub kind of thing. Give it a package name. These are standard Maven coordinates that you're providing. And then on the next screen, and it's actually doing a validation right now. It's validating what it just did is verify on GitHub that that project doesn't already exist, as an example. And then if I hit next here, it's then going to offer me a few other options that are kind of important. Specifically, what do I want my default Jenkins file to look like? So the Jenkins file is the orchestration solution for your deployment pipeline, okay? So you can see I can actually just do a simple release one up there. I can do release and stage, and then I can do a release, approve, and promote as an example. And so that's the option I've been using. So we're going to add more templates to this, but it is just a Jenkins file. It's just an artifact that you can edit yourself after you're done. This is standard Jenkins 2.0 kind of capability. It's stuff we've been integrating with OpenShift now for quite some time. It's just now we kind of wizardized it to make it super easy. So you can just hit cancel. I'm just going to cancel here because I already have it running. Okay. Okay. So I have my code base up. Let me click over here to create, and then pipelines. This is my last pipeline run. You can see it right there. Build 51. That's how many times I've run it. Right, to see how it works. And so now I've got everything set. I created my work item. I created my task. And now, what I need to write my code. Okay, it is out here on GitHub. Okay, where is it on GitHub? As an example. So you might be thinking, okay, great. I can just do a get clone, use, in my case, I use a lot of Visual Studio Code. Did you guys know about Visual Studio Code? This guy right here, right? That's Visual Studio Code. It's Visual Studio, but it's not. It's based on the same editor. It's an open source editor from Microsoft that we partner with, and we gave it the Java capabilities. So we provide the Java plugin for it, and I can just use this as a nice code editor. I can use my IntelliJ. I also have IntelliJ here. I can use Eclipse, JBoss Developer Studio, whatever. It doesn't really matter, but I'm not going to. That's the easy stuff. What I'm going to use is this thing called Eclipse Che. This is a browser-based editor, a browser-based IDE built right into the system, and this allows you to start programming immediately. And see, I can come over here and now fix my Aloha 2 issue. But before we do that, let's do this. Let's do I can just start typing, and actually kind of show you that. A router, if I spell correctly, okay, and all right. So right there, you can kind of see it's giving me the traditional IntelliSense-like capabilities you're used to from an IDE. What is the code completion for that? The methods in this case, I don't care about those. Where I already got what I need here. But this is how you set up a Vertex application. Router.get, router.put, router.post, router.delete. Very simple stuff. And then you have the business logic associated with that. Like you can see this.greeting. That's a standard Java 8, by the way, method reference. So we use lambdas, method references now in Java 8. You can kind of see here's an example of that down here. And then here's the greeting, okay? But the actual format for that is Aloha 2. I can come over and fix that. Let's remove Aloha. Actually, I use Aloha because I'm originally from Hawaii, but most of you folks are probably originally from France, right? So we'll pick Bonjour. There we go. And so let me do this. I'm going to now hit run. And here's what's interesting. I'm just a developer using my browser, running this in the browser because I'm running it against a real Linux container through the browser. So I just ran that application in the browser. I can go into my terminal now. Let's see here. Sometimes this terminal, after I put the laptop to sleep, doesn't quite want to come back to life, but let's open it up again. There we go. So it's a standard Linux terminal. I can do a cat etc system release. If I spelled correctly there, see it's a standard Linux. I can ps-ef grep. All right, I can see I have Java things running. I can run top. I'm running Linux through the browser, okay? That's a Docker container I'm interacting with, because that's kind of how this magic works. I don't need to really care about that, but one of the things I can do is I can switch into the actual project directory, and I can do this now. Since I am running my little Vertex application, I can come over here and say curl localhost 8080 API greeting. I have too many E's there, don't I? Question mark name equal Burr. Let's see if I get that right. Bonjour Burr. There we go. So it's responding with the JSON payload. So I'm testing my app now. I can run the Maven test here to run full Maven testing because I have unit tests built right in. And because it's Vertex, it has this really great hot reloading feature. So let me go. I made it Bonjour X. Yep, there it goes. It reloaded. Come over here, run it again. Bonjour X. So I can do this nice interactive testing model. Boom. Look, that's what I want. I think that's what my requirement was. I think that's what the work item was that I was assigned. Let's say I think that's the thing. Okay? Fair? But it's a full programming environment, right? So it's actually pretty amazing what you can do in a browser this day and age. Let's also change the main index.html to make this a little bit more interesting. Let's just change the title to, let's see, is that my actual title? Yeah, I think that's my, oh, right, this is the title I'm more interested in. Let's change this title to DevNation Federal. Just make it more obvious, okay? Now, let's say I think that's my code. I've done all the testing I want to do. I'm going to git commit, all right? Updated my stuff just to give it a comment. And then I'm going to do what all developers love to do, is I'm going to push it. All right? We're going to push it. There it is. It's pushing now. It's going out to GitHub. And if I come over here and refresh on GitHub, just to kind of see what it looks like here, updated my stuff right there. So it has our last commit. And our pipeline is already kicked off. So the webhook with GitHub is already preset for you. That's what the wizard did. So any push to that repo by any team member kicks off their pipeline automatically. So the pipeline is running now. This is a Jenkins pipeline. Let's see here. We can see that. Let's log into it. And how are we doing on time, by the way? I forget what time we're supposed to wrap up here.
About 5 minutes.
5 minutes, OK. So there it is. It's waiting for a Jenkins slave to get tasked with that. And here's what's cool. All this is actually running on OpenShift.com. So everything that I've been showing you is already running on OpenShift hosted here. So there's my Che project. Jenkins is running right there. So this is the guy that's waiting for a slave. So if I go look at the monitoring tab here, we'll see. We should see it looks like a slave has started. So if I come back over here, yep, slave has started. It's moving along the pipeline. It's doing its build and release stage. And all that's occurring because in this repo is this thing called the Jenkins file. This is the part that I mentioned. This is a piece of the magic that defines programmatically and an artifact you control within source control, right, in GitHub in this case, what the pipeline looks like for your organization. You can go as crazy as you want to go. It's groovy code. Right? If you want to basically, send an email to somebody and wait for another email before it approves and let 5 people know and do chat ops with people, you can do all that here. All right, we're going to be working on some demos with chat ops, like that'll be cool, where everyone in the group here would have to give it a +1 to approve it kind of thing, because it's a team thing. But that's kind of what's going on. You can see it's doing its build release. It's going through its process there. And while that's occurring, though, I want to show you one other thing over here. Now that I think about it, I forgot to show you this. Let me open up my POM XML. Okay, come on, POM XML. And look, I think I might have run this thing out of gas. It's open, open, open. Is it going to open for me? It's trying. OK, I know how to fix this. Right, so while let's fix this and we'll jump back to our pipeline. So let's go here. Dun, 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 deading. Stop. Will it stop? All right. That whole Docker image I've been running for a little bit too long. Docker container, let's go ahead and I just stopped and restart it. And while that's occurring, let's go back here and look at our pipeline. OK, it's already at the approve stage. Notice this says rollout to stage. That's over here. If I come look at my stage environment, let's see how that rollout is coming along. OK, looks like it rolled out. Let's check stage, refresh. There it is, DevNation Federal. Let's see here, invoked, it says Bonjour X. So I'm now in stage. This is where the QA team, the usability, the UAT, we all agree, yep, that's what we wanted. OK, that's what we thought it was. Roll out and promote it to production. All right, and there it goes. And if we go over here, you'll see it roll out specifically. And there, so it's going through its rolling update process, standard Kubernetes, OpenShift rolling update process, pushing that out into a production environment, our Burr Sutter run environment here. So that's occurring. Let me see if my Che restarted yet. Nope, still not restarted yet. Let's see here. Come on. Nope, it's trying to restart it. So like I said, I might be running this thing out of resources. But let's go back over here and look at our applications tab. Looks like it is rolled out now. So this is my runtime here. There's DevNation Federal and Bonjour X. So that is now what my end users see in production. So that concept of being able to kick off the pipeline from a git, commit, git, push is certainly part of the architecture, as well as running a pipeline and everything you just saw here. One last thing I'll show you over here is the pipeline ran, and this is where we get our next stack report. So the stack report runs every time, right? So every time we push through a pipeline, it does our complexity check. It'll do whatever checks you want. In this case, this is the checks that we're building into it for CVEs within your jar files as an example. Okay, we're going to do a lot more with this as we go forward. We need to start bringing on users, though, so we can learn from your experiences too. It's a kind of a big data machine learning kind of problem. The more stacks you put in our system, the more we learn, and we'll be able to tell that your stack is not as cool as his or her stack. As a matter of fact, we'll know that based on this version of Spring, that version of Hibernate, and this version of blah, 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 what is the most common usage patterns across the users of the space. We'll be able to do that kind of crowdsourced data in that case. I'm kind of curious to see if this thing will come back up. Yeah, it did. All right. So let's see if it'll load for me. I just want to show you this one last little bit. All right, if it'll load. What I was trying to do is get this POM XML to load. Will it load? There we go. Because right here, actually, as you make changes directly in the POM XML editor, we will provide the warnings there too. Okay, so we're telling you have a problem with that jar file you've just added. I think we're out of time. Hopefully that demo made sense and we got through it unscathed. But if you have more interest in this space, feel free to hit us up on OpenShift.io and get on the wait list specifically. Follow me on Twitter and do check out all those books and other things you can download from developers.redhat.com. Thank you very much for your time. I'll take questions outside the room since we're out of time. Thank you.